you the Rosbifs Rugby preview of Dax. Rosbifs, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby in English. And we are doing a preview of each Pro D2 side, and we are on to Dax. One of the smaller clubs within the league. It's a small budget side. They're a bit of an underdog story generally. They came 11th last year, which is pretty good in the end. They were dicing with relegation at times. They were actually made the top 6 the previous year and got humiliated in the barrage. But so it was a bit of a second season syndrome after coming up from National the year before that. Dax generally a little bit of a French rugby stereotype. They've got some massive, massive men. I'm very sceptical about some of the weights that are listed of their players because they are enormous. They are traditionally hard to beat at home and incredibly loose away. You know, at home it's 10-man rugby with loads of kicking, and then away they run it from everywhere and anywhere. It's kind of this weird dynamic that they have. They became easier to beat at home at the Maurice Boyou last season, which kind of played into the fact that they were struggling with relegation. They are an underdog in the league. They do have one of the smaller budgets, and that's reflected kind of in the signings as well. They've only made 2 senior signings. Charlie Matthews, former Quins man, who was pretty good at Biarritz last year. He moves up the road. He's one of only 2 senior squads signings. The other signing to watch out for that we've got there is Jacopi Sovu, who comes into the Espoirs, into the under-23s from Australia, from West Tigers in RL. They're the West Tigers kind of under-21s. Don't know much about him, but that's why we've kind of got him in there. If you listen to the podcast this week, you'll have heard Rich talk about him, about how he's kind of related to the current West Tigers captain. There's clearly, he's doesn't have an age written down on All Rugby, which is a great source of stats if you want to follow them or check that out on the internet, all.rugby, which kind of adds to the intrigue. And Dax are pretty good at finding kind of some random players, both within the community. Dax is in the rugby heartlands of Southwest. It's in Lond, and they play the Lond Derby against Mont-de-Marsan, but generally, the kind of what have they got to play with at the moment? Jean-Baptiste Singer played the most minutes. He's their key man. He also was their top try scorer with 7 tries. As a second rower, 7 tries. That's kind of what we're getting at. It's pretty limited stuff at times. Genesis Lamalu is absolutely bloody enormous. They need to get as much of his ball carrying as they can. In the game that we saw them play in the derby against Mont-de-Marsan, some of the carries he made were terrifying, bone-crunching from the stands. Théo Gatelier is their main threat out wide, kind of loads of line breaks. He's their second top try scorer. So as unsung heroes, we've had to do some digging for this. Arnaud Alette is a flanker. He gives everything you'd expect from a flanker, boatloads of tackles and work rate. Brice Ferrer, Jean-Baptiste Singer's second row partner, he makes a load of tackles as well. And Ibn Hirat Urati, good Basque name that. He is their turnover king for the hooker. And also a little shout out to Nefi Leatagunga, the former Leicester man, who was pretty good at his time as Leicester. Also absolutely bloody enormous. At the game that we saw at Mont-de-Marsan, he, in the down-ups, in the warm-ups where they kind of go 5 metres, down, up 5 metres, he was getting lapped in them, which is pretty impressive given how short a time that is. So shout out him, but he's still a pretty good player, and he's part of that pack that when they get it right is good. They have been pretty terrible at set piece. Their line-out was dreadful when the couple of times that we saw them. The maul game was nearly non-existent as well, which is so strange for such a big pack of forwards. They've got some really interesting young talent. A player that we were sceptical about including in this is Joe Payne-Isera. We were huge fans of him 2 seasons ago. We labelled him the next Rapeni Thau. Short and squat winger, freakish power, freakish pace. Unfortunately now has the kind of some of the negative connotations that you might expect with Rapeni Thau. Namely, getting it wrong with and getting a bit checker pass with alcohol. He has a suspended sentence for violence in a bar, and that is why he didn't play much last year. We don't know if he's going to play that much this year, or whether the club feel like he served his time. Don't know. Hugo 4K is an outside centre. He partnered really well with Noah Nene last season. Noah Nene, who was only ever on loan from Stade Francais, but made the France squad ahead of the Six Nations while he was a Dax player still. And he was a proper blockbuster player. We saw him at the end of January away at Soy-en-Galem for Dax. And he was there, so physical, their best player by miles. They look to him for absolutely everything. Real X-Factor player. They lose him, although he didn't play much at the back end of last season anyway. But Hugo 4K partnered really well with him, and they fed off each other really well. Another good young player, Raphael Lebois. Fair effort to get the amount of game time and in winning teams. You know, he's part of some big wins as a 20-year-old loose head at Dax. So one to look out for. He could be the sort of player that gets snapped up by a top 14 club in the future. He's kind of the next in production line because Louis Marie is a young prop that has gone to Bordeaux. So they are that kind of feeder club vibe, that small budget rugby heartlands. They'll bring players through the academy and the local region. How we sum up Dax in a sentence? Well, before that, Rich and I both see them struggling. They do have a 5-point deduction. Sorry, forgot to mention that. They were deducted 5 points for some administrative errors in their budgets and not being able to support some of the numbers in their budgets, which is such a key part of French rugby. The budgets that they submit to the LNR and being debt-free is such a big thing, and you do see these financial penalties in Pro D2. They start on -5, somehow less than the -3 that Biarritz start on. -5 is quite a lot. It feels, when you look at how much the teams were separated towards the end of the season in that bottom third, 5 points is a big margin. And because of that, and some of the quality that they've lost, and their tiny squad size, it's going to be tough going again this year with that points deduction. But if you've got any questions on Dax, please put them in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to us, or if you've got any questions and want to know more, follow us at Rosbifs Rugby on pretty much all social media and slide into our DMs. But yeah, we want to hear from you. Get in touch. That was our roundup of Dax.